Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 55 of the Unstoppable Entertainment Show, the most comprehensive entertainment news show on the internet. I am, of course, Nate Schaffner, otherwise known as the Unstoppable Nate. I said I'd be back, and here I am. I hope you guys. I will be doing two shows today, so just wanted to throw that out there. I hope you guys are doing okay. I hope I hope you're doing well. I hope you guys continue to enjoy the show. Um, but before I get started, I just wanted to remind everybody that if you like this show, go ahead and hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, spread the word, tell your friends. Also, if you have a comment, a question, or if you'd like me to talk about certain movies or franchises, you can email me anytime at the address listed in the description of this video. So, with that out of the way, let's get started. I want to get started by talking about something that um, was very unfortunate and very sad to hear. I'm starting this episode on a bit of a downer, but I really wanted to talk about it. Back on for those who don't know, I'm sure people are aware, but I just wanted to talk about the fact that back on February 15th, Robert Duvall died. And I just wanted to talk about it for a minute because I've always as I've gotten older, I've educated myself on film history and watching a lot of older films. And there was a time when I would watch just newer stuff and not a lot of older films, and especially going to film school, that really ignited my love of film history and a lot of the great filmmakers and actors and actresses of uh, of older generations. And I really enjoyed watching Robert Duvall. It sounds it's well, I guess it doesn't sound weird for someone of my generation, but the first movie I uh, saw Robert Duvall in was was Days of Thunder. Um, and that movie is decent. It's wildly entertaining. Um, but there was an authenticity that Robert Duvall uh, brought to the character of Harry. And Robert Duvall's character in Days of Thunder was very much like I it sounds weird to say about a movie like that, but I know very little about NASCAR, about stock car racing. Um, and Robert Duvall's character, I felt, not only educated Tom Cruise's character of Cole Trickle, but he educated film audiences who didn't really know a lot about NASCAR. Um, and Robert Duvall again brought such an authenticity to that character, and that was something that he brought to every. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that I've seen every movie that he's done. I mean, he was. Uh, I think I want to make sure. He would. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that I've seen every movie or every movie that he's been in because I haven't. But I will say that authenticity that I was talking about, that is something that he brought to every role that he played. I mean, he was in. I'm a big fan of the classic Twilight Zone series, and he was in an episode of that. I mean, he started acting. Um, uh, you know, he had been around quite a bit. I guess is what I'm trying to say. That episode aired in 1963, I think. So that's how long he had been acting. And of course, being in the Godfather movies, you know, um, and winning the Oscar for Tender Mercies. Um, I just wanted to, he reunited with Tom Cruise in the Jack Reacher movie. He was in Crazy Heart with uh, Jeff Bridges. Um, you know, I just wanted to talk about the Godfather movies for a minute, and I just want to say this off the top. I don't think you can consider yourself a film buff if you haven't seen The Godfather. That's just my opinion. Anyway, so it's interesting because there was a lot of, for those who don't know, there were a lot of production issues regarding the filming of The Godfather Part 3. Um, and one of those issues was um, they didn't pay Robert Duvall what he deserved to they didn't pay Robert Duvall what he was deserved, so to be in Godfather Part 3. So Robert Duvall was not in Godfather Part 3. They didn't pay him what he deserved, and he was like, okay, I'm not going to be in it then. And I'm not big on what if situations, what if scenarios. Um, but I was listening to this other YouTuber talk about um, The Godfather Part 3. And this was long before the death of Robert Duvall. But he was talking about how the production and the original story of Godfather 3 was deeply compromised because the studio refused to pay Robert Duvall what he was deserved, and so um, um, they had to change the story a little bit and work around the fact that Robert Duvall, the character of Tom Hagen, wasn't going to be in it. And a few years back, they re-released. They Francis Ford Coppola did a kind of director's cut of Godfather 3, and it was called The Godfather Coda: The Death of Michael Corleone. I think that's what it was called. And it was essentially Francis Ford Coppola's what he wanted to do with Godfather Part 3. Now, um, I was listening to this other YouTuber talk about what essentially, and again, I'm not big on what if scenarios or what if situations, but like he was talking about the fact that this other YouTuber that I listened to, he said, Godfather 3 should have been um, Al Pacino and Robert Duvall. It should have been Michael Corleone and Tom Hagen battling for the soul and the future of the family. And I'm like, and again, I'm not big on what if scenarios, but I'm like, that would have been really interesting. That would have been really, really interesting. And I'm like, I would have loved to have seen that. And by the way, I like Godfather 3. Um, do I think it's as good as its predecessors? No, but I like it. I think there are definitely some shortcomings about it. But he was like, yeah, Godfather 3 should have been Tom Hagen and Michael Corleone battling for the soul of the family. And I'm like, yeah, that would have been really, really interesting. So I just wanted to talk about that for a little bit. He he was in Open Range. He was in the sequel to Gettysburg called Gods and Generals, which I heard wasn't very good. He played General Robert E. Lee. You know, I keep thinking about there's a I want to there's a great quote by oh yeah, and that opening sequence with the helicopters. It's not the opening sequence, but that first sequence with Robert Duvall in Apocalypse Now. It's classic. It's classic. Um, and I think he was in Network. Guys, if you haven't seen Network is wild. It's so it's crazy. He was in The Eagle Has Landed with Michael Caine. He was in yeah, he was actually in the first movie that George Lucas actually did. He was Robert Duvall was in this. George Lucas did this movie before Star Wars called THX 1138, and Robert Duvall was in that movie. Um, um, he was in True Grit. Um, he made an appearance in Bullet. Um, he was in this sci-fi movie in 1967 called Countdown. Um, you know, there was a lot of there's a great quote by Christopher Lee. Christopher Lee once said that every actor has to make terrible films from time to time, but the trick is never to be terrible in them. And I think towards uh, the latter half of his career, um, Robert Duvall was in. He did a couple of stinkers, but he was great in them. He was. I think the two movies that come to mind for me are he did this movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger called The Sixth Day. It's terrible. It's terrible, but he's great in it. He's very good in the movie. Um, there's this other movie that he was in. It was one of the last movies that he was in. It's called The Judge, with Robert Downey Jr. And it's about this estranged father and son who have to uh, they have to uh, mend their relationship. Robert Downey Jr. plays this lawyer, and he ends up having to defend his father in this court case, uh, albeit hesitantly. Reluctantly, I guess is the word to use. He reluctantly defends his father in this court case, and through this throughout the case, Robert Downey Jr., his character, and the father, played by Robert Duvall, they end up coming to terms with each other and mending their relationship. It's called The Judge. I saw it in the theater. It's not very good. I think it it could have been better. It could have been a lot better. But Robert Duvall was great in that movie, and it was one of the last movies that he ever did, and he ended up getting an Oscar nomination for his role in that movie. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Again, there was an authenticity that he brought to uh, uh, every role that he was in. Um, and uh, I just wanted to talk about Robert Duvall for a minute. And it seems that we it seems that a lot of great actors and actresses and we've been losing a lot lately, and a lot of good ones, a lot of great ones, and Robert Duvall, he was a good one. I mean, he really was, and we all will miss him. Um, so I just wanted to talk about Robert Duvall for a few minutes. Um, this next bit of news um, is a little disturbing. Um, and here's the thing. My goal with this show, I can tell you what and I said this from the get go. This show is not going to be a TMZ bullshit kind of entertainment news show. I want this show to be about legitimate entertainment news for people who love movies and television, because that's what I learned I have learned over the course of doing this show, and I did some research about, prior to the start of the show, I did some research about, if I'm going to do a YouTube show, what do I want it to be about? And, I talked to a couple of people about it, and they were like, talk about what you love. Don't talk about what you hate, because nobody's interested in that. Talk about what you love. But I also said I don't want this show to be kind of this TMZ bullshit kind of, he said, she said, she married him, blah, 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 all that stuff. I don't want to do that. However, sometimes shit happens that affects the and that affects the I guess what I'm trying to say is sometimes shit happens that it affects what we choose to see. And one of the more, I guess one of my favorite actors up until recently was Shia LaBeouf. I love Shia. I think he is an extremely underappreciated and underrated actor. But over the past several years, he's kind of gone off the deep end. But I have kind of, for the most part, I've defended him in the past. It's like when a lot of times when because Shia LaBeouf became extremely well known over a very short period of time. And that can really mess with people's heads. That can really mess you up. And Shia LaBeouf has gotten into some trouble in the past. But I've always defended him. Like, I mean, he's probably a little messed up considering how famous. I mean, he became famous overnight. I mean, it was wild. However, I guess the reason I have defended him in the past is because he's never. It depends on the degree. At least for me, it's a really black and white issue for me in terms of like how how much trouble has he gotten into, and to what degree of that of trouble has he gotten into. How severe is it? Well, um, it's gotten pretty severe, to the point where I can no longer support or defend Shia LaBeouf. He's it's gotten too much, at least for me. Um, there's this article here on the Hollywood Reporter, um, published by Lexi Carson, um, that basically, so the article goes into detail about, um, Shia LaBeouf got arrested, um, on February 17th, following an altercation, um, and he became aggressive and allegedly fought with a couple of guys. And these two guys, they both told the police that Shia LaBeouf assaulted them. Um, LaBeouf is accused of punching one bartender multiple times and striking another in the face. He also allegedly shouted homophobic slurs. And for me, and now, uh, it looks like he's been arrested again. This article was published on February 28th. It looks like he was arrested again. Um, and he just can't seem to. Basically, he's gotten into, physical altercations. A couple of physical altercations over a very short period of time. And it's just like, at least for me, it's just like, dude, like, I don't I don't know what's going on with you. I don't know what's going on with him. But I think he needs help. I think, and I've always thought he was a good actor. A very very fine actor. But it's the black and white issue for me is that I can't defend anybody who like physically assaults people. Um, you know, and he's gotten into trouble with that in the past. Um, and I just can't I I can't support that. And it's just like, what, fuck him. You've gotten yourself into so much trouble that even your most loyal and supportive fans are just like, what, dude, fuck off. Like, I'm tired. I can't do it no more. I think that he needs help. I hope that he gets it, but getting yourself into two physical altercations um, within a couple of weeks it's messed up. It's messed up. Um, and I'll still watch some of the stuff that I'll still watch the stuff that he was in. I can no longer support anything that he's in or support him. Um, but those say whatever you want, but he's great in those Transformers movies. He's so funny and so talented, and you know I I defend him in Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I um, he was in this movie a few years back called Peanut Butter Falcon. Um, don't look it up. Don't read anything about it. Just watch it. The Peanut Butter Falcon. It's great. But now I'm just like, dude, like I'm done. I'm done. So I just wanted to talk about that for a minute. I know most of you guys maybe you don't care, but and I said from the outset of this show that I wasn't going to talk about this kind of thing, but here we are. So, something's going on with my light. Uh oh. Uh oh. Hold on. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. But yeah, so I just wanted to talk about. It's crazy. It's crazy. All right, let's move on to something more pleasant, shall we? So, um, one of my favorite uh, actresses right now, and is is Chloe Grace Moretz. For those who don't know, Chloe Grace Moretz, she played Hit Girl in the Kick-Ass movies. She was in the first Equalizer movie with Denzel Washington. Um, and yeah, I mean she's what else was she? There was this movie. Uh, there was this horror movie that she was in. Hold on. Um, Greta. Greta, which I've heard is decent. Um, she was in the she was in the remake of Carrie, which the less said about that movie, the better. But I've always liked her. Um, I briefly mentioned on last episode. There's this Swedish vampire horror movie called Let the Right One In, and there was the American remake called Let Me In. And it's great. The American remake is actually great, and she's in that. But I've always loved her. And she recently announced that she was going to take a little break from acting, which uh, you know, is cool. You're young. You got your whole life ahead of you. Take a break. Do what you need to do. So, but it was announced back on February 17th that she is going to be going to be in this action comedy movie. This article is on Deadline, published by Andreas Weissman. And this article says Walton Goggins from The White Lotus has come aboard to lead action comedy Mister from Bright White Light and John Wick studio Thunder Road. Chloe Grace Moretz will co-star. Now, what's interesting about this is that Josh Brolin was formally attached to be in this movie, but he had to. It says here, this article says that he had to drop out due to scheduling issues. So I'm guessing that Walton Goggins is going to play the role that Josh Brolin was going to play. Now, this article does go on to say that the film will mark the directorial debut of well-known second unit and action director Wade Eastwood, whose credits include Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, Mission Impossible Fallout, and Jumanji: The Next Level. Now, for those who don't know, second unit and action director. Second unit and action director means, like, for the most part, second unit is, I want to make sure I get the terminology correct. So I'm just gonna read this just so I give you guys the proper information. So a second unit in filmmaking is a separate dedicated production team that films footage simultaneously with the main production unit, to increase efficiency. The second unit director, they typically film action scenes, stunts, and basically sequences that do not involve any of the principal actors. The main key scenes with the principal cast can be directed by the main director. So, like, an example of a second unit sequence or would be like the opening of a James Bond movie, right? Like, that is directed by a second unit film director. So what's interesting about this is that second unit director Wade Eastwood, who directed second unit for Mission Impossible Fallout and Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning and Jumanji: The Next Level, meaning he did most of the action sequences for those movies. That's awesome, because anybody, especially those Mission Impossible action sequences, those sequences are amazing. They're amazing. So this will be the directorial debut for him, for Wade Eastwood. The article does go on to say that Mr. follows a man, played by Walton Goggins, who wakes up in a strange house covered in blood and comes to realize his true identity while fighting off contract killers from his past, including everyone from his exes to his best friend. To get out, he teams up with his estranged daughter, played by Chloe Grace Moretz, who also has ended up in the family business. But they will need to repair their relationship in order to survive. This sounds awesome. You know, I think I talked about this last time, but this sounds awesome. I want to talk about Walton Goggins. I've liked him for a long time. You know, he was he was in the second Ant-Man movie, and he was great in that. Obviously, Justified, um, the TV series Justified. He was in The Hateful Eight, directed by Quentin Tarantino. He was in Django Unchained. Um, he was in Predators. Um, and he's in the Fallout TV series. He's in the White Lotus. I mean, he's everywhere these days, um, and he's awesome. So I think him being in this movie with Chloe Grace Moretz, and it'll be great to see her back too. She hasn't she's kind of taken a break, uh, like I mentioned, but it'll be great to see her back. And it would be awesome if this was another. It would be awesome to see Walton Goggins take on this kind of John Wick. What was the movie with Bob Odenkirk called Nobody? Um, it would be cool to see uh, Walton Goggins be that kind of character. That would be cool. That would be awesome. Um, and again, having to repair the relationship with his daughter while navigating this fighting off of contract killers, and this sounds like it's going to be a really character layered action movie. Um, this sounds awesome. So jump in the comment section and let me know what you guys think about Walton Goggins and Chloe Grace Moretz teaming for Mister. Okay, so um, let me see here. Okay, so next up, a few episodes ago on this show, I mentioned that there's going to be this new Scooby-Doo uh, series on Netflix, and uh, I mentioned how much I like Scooby-Doo, um, and evidently it's going to be a live-action Scooby-Doo series. And there's been, I don't know how well they're going to pull that off, but we'll see. But there has been some casting news. There is casting news regarding that live action Scooby Doo Netflix series. This article is on CBR, published by Jamie Lovett. This article says McKenna Grace is boarding Netflix's live action Scooby Doo reboot in a major role. McKenna Grace will star as young Daphne Blake. The show is billed as an origin story of sorts, revealing how Mystery Inc. first met and formed their iconic troupe of mystery-obsessed meddling kids. Let's see. During their final summer at camp, old friends Shaggy and Daphne get embroiled in a haunting mystery surrounding a lonely, lost Great Dane puppy that may have been a witness to a supernatural murder. Together with the pragmatic and scientific townie, Velma, and the strange but ever so handsome new kid, Freddy, they set out to solve the case that is pulling each of them into a creepy nightmare that threatens to expose all of their secrets. So for those who don't know, and this article does point this out, McKenna Grace also voiced the character of Daphne in the 2020 animated movie Scoob, for those who care. um, and I will say I really like McKenna Grace. She's not someone that like I rush out to see everything that she's in, but I like everything that I've seen her in, she's been great. I mean, she was, I mean, and she does have a history of doing horror movies. She was in Five Nights at the sequel to Five Nights at Freddy's. She was in Annabelle Comes Home. Um, she is most recently in Scream 7. And she has been in she was in the last two Ghostbusters movies. Um, and I thought she was great in uh, I didn't see Frozen Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, but I did see Ghostbusters Afterlife, and I really enjoyed that one. And she was great in that. She was in and she's going to be in the new Hunger Games prequel, Sunrise on the Reaping. She made a brief appearance in Captain Marvel, I think. Hold on. And she was also in Young Sheldon. Um, uh, which is the prequel to The Big Bang Theory. So she's another she's someone else who's like she's everywhere. And it's because she's extremely talented. Um and so yeah, so McKenna Grace is going to be in this Scooby-Doo movie or Scooby-Doo Netflix series, I'm sorry. I'm a little apprehensive about this because okay, so it's going to be an origin story of sorts, it revealing how Mystery Inc. first met and formed their troupe. Does anybody care about how they met? I mean, it sounds interesting, and it sounds like this could be how they met Scooby Doo, which is cool. You know, I I I I guess I'm wondering if anybody cares about an origin story to Scooby Doo. I mean, if it's good, I'll you know. The other the other thing I'm dubious about is it being live action. I think I think Scooby Doo is something that um, I want to get my words right. Scooby Doo is something that works best in animation. There are things in Scooby Doo that you can really only do in animation. And I don't know about anybody else, but the Scooby Doo iterations that we've gotten in live action, I haven't personally particularly enjoyed. Um, so I don't know if they're going to be able to pull it off. I will say I do. I like Scooby Doo as a franchise, and I like McKenna Grace. I mean, she's 19 and she's everywhere. Like that's wild to me. She's so talented. Um, I'm a little apprehensive about this. I have to say. Um, it has nothing to do with her. It's just like the premise of the story and it being live action. So we'll see what happens. So anyway, those are my thoughts on it. If you have any. I mean, maybe I'm completely off base. Maybe I'm not. Jump in the comment section and let me know what you guys think about this. Okay. So there's there's another bit of sad news that I wanted to talk about really quick, and I was really sad to hear about this as well. Um, there was um, a wonderful character actor by the name of Tom Noonan. Um, who was in a lot of he played a lot of villains in film. Um, he played Frankenstein in the Monster Squad movie. His name is Tom Noonan. Now, for those who don't know who Tom Noonan was, um, he played Frankenstein in the Monster Squad. He was in The Last Action Hero. He was in RoboCop 2. But he was also in this movie called Manhunter in 1986 that I believe, yes, it was directed by Michael Mann, and it stars William Peterson. Now, Manhunter, and by the way, that's one word, Manhunter. Manhunter was actually the first movie. Manhunter is based off of the Thomas Harris novel Red Dragon, which is the prequel to The Silence of the Lambs. So, and Manhunter, the movie, starred William Peterson as Will Graham. And Tom Noonan played Francis Dollarhide. And he is absolutely terrifying in this movie. Now, Brian Cox plays Hannibal Lecter in this movie. So allow me to give a brief history. So Manhunter, directed by Michael Mann, came out in 1986. It is based off the Thomas Harris novel Red Dragon, a prequel to The Silence of the Lambs. Then in 1991, there was The Silence of the Lambs film, where with Anthony Hopkins and Jodie Foster. And then in 2001, they did the Hannibal movie with Anthony Hopkins and Jodie Foster. It's not very good. That's based off of the Thomas Harris novel. Hannibal. And then I think it was 2002. There was this, they did the movie called Red Dragon, which is the second film adaptation of the novel, of the Red Dragon novel. Manhunter was the first. Red Dragon is the second film adaptation of the Red Dragon novel, and Anthony Hopkins came back to play Hannibal Lecter, and that was the last time he ever played him. But Manhunter was the first film adaptation of the Red Dragon novel. And Tom Noonan played Francis Dollarhide. And he's terrifying. And that movie is is um, and I say this, I don't have a problem with it, but some people might. That movie is very graphic. It's very violent. William Peterson is fantastic. Francis Tom Noonan is absolutely terrifying in that movie. And I brought up the graphicness of it just to, like, in case you haven't seen it. I never had a problem with it, but some people might. But I wanted to bring up because when I heard that Tom Noonan died, he was a wonderful character actor. When I heard that Tom Noonan died, I was like, "Oh my god, he played the guy who played Francis Dollarhide in Manhunter." So I wanted to talk about Tom Noonan just for a little bit. You know, um, if you guys haven't seen Manhunter, um, it is um, it's great. It's great. It's directed by Michael Mann, like I said, um, and a lot of people, a lot of, I guess you would say, a lot of people who have read the Red Dragon novel, a lot of people prefer Brian Cox's performance as Hannibal Lecter over Anthony Hopkins. I am not one of them, but I do think Brian Cox is excellent in the movie. But I just wanted to talk about Tom Noonan for a minute. Um, again, when I heard that he died, I was like, "Oh my god!" Like I remember him from Manhunter. So I just wanted to talk about Tom Noonan for a minute, and it's been a minute since I've watched Manhunter. I might have to do that. That movie's great. I mean, there's this great. It's um don't I'll say this. Don't watch it at night. and I say this, look, I love watching horror movies at night. Watch Manhunter during the day because otherwise that movie will freak you out, man. Oh my god. So I just wanted to say a few words about Tom Noonan. So moving on here. I think um I can't I honestly I can't remember whether I've talked about this movie in previous episodes. Um so Daisy Ridley is going to be in this action thriller called The Good Samaritan. That's going to be directed by Pierre Morel or Pierre Morel, who directed the first Taken movie with Liam Neeson. Um, and uh, there's been some casting news regarding that movie. This article is on the Hollywood Reporter, published by Scott Roxborough. Um, Josh Duhamel from Transformers and Shotgun Wedding, and Charlton Copley from District 9 and Monkey Man have joined Daisy Ridley in The Good Samaritan, the upcoming action thriller from Taken and Peppermint director Pierre Morel. In this article does go on to say that in the film, Star Wars alum Daisy Ridley plays Dr. Rosalind Carver, a successful entrepreneur who, together with her husband Matt, rescues a wounded man drifting off the coast of Indonesia, unaware they are about to become part of a deadly conspiracy. Within hours, Matt is abducted by a gang of ruthless pirates led by Langbor, played by Charlton Copley. excuse me, Rosalind finds herself forced to team up with a battle-hardened ex-mercenary, played by Josh Duhamel, with his own reasons for taking down the pirates, and in doing so, expose a global trafficking empire. Cool. Sounds awesome. You know, I've talked about this before, but I love movies that you think it's going to be one kind of movie, or you think certain things are going to go one way, and then they end up taking a complete left turn. And this sounds like this is going to be one of those movies. Um, you know, every character has their own motivations behind taking down these pirates, and that sounds awesome. Charlton Copley. Look, I haven't seen Monkey Man. District 9 is awesome. District 9 is awesome. If you guys... So an interesting bit of trivia about District 9. District 9 was made for $30 million. And the reason I bring that up is because everybody knows, or at least everybody should know, that visual effects in film doing visual effects in film can be extremely expensive. There are countless amounts of visual effects in District 9. And it looks amazing. That movie visually is spectacular. And it's a great movie. It's awesome. I don't know how they made that movie for $30 million. They really knew how to spend that money well. District 9 is awesome. I believe Charlton Copley was in he was in the motion capture suit for this movie called Chappie, which is from the same director who did District 9. Chappie's not very good. But District 9 is awesome, and Charlton Copley is great in that movie. Josh Duhamel is interesting because he was in hold on. Josh Duhamel is an interesting actor because I feel like Josh Duhamel is someone who that Hollywood has never been able to figure out what to do with. Like, okay, what kind of... It seems like Josh Duhamel has tried to... I'm trying to think of how to say it properly. It seems like Hollywood can't figure out what to do with him. And he's done a lot of different kinds of movies. Everything from Transformers. I think he was in like a film adaptation of a Nicholas Sparks novel. It seems like Hollywood can't figure out what to do with him. And every time they think they figured it out, audiences are just like, nope, I don't buy him in this role. Like there's no authenticity about being him in this role. I like Josh Duhamel. I think he has had I think he is someone who has there are a number of actors that I think of when Josh Duhamel is an example of an actor that I think has had every opportunity to have a traditional leading man career, and for whatever reason, uh, his agents or himself or whoever in Hollywood, they've never been able to figure it out. I hope this movie is good. And I like Josh Duhamel in the Transformers movies. I mean, say whatever you want about those movies, but I think it was solid. Um, you know, so I hope this is good. It would be nice to see again. I've said this before. It would be nice to see Daisy Ridley in a hit that isn't Star Wars. I think she's done some exceptional work post Star Wars. Unfortunately, none of the work that she's done post Star Wars has had has had um, a great deal of financial success. So I hope that this movie is good and is successful. Um, and this sounds interesting too. Like I said. So and it'll be nice to see Charlotte Copley in something again. That's a, and I mean, Taken. I the Pierre Morel, directing this movie. He directed Taken. I have not seen Peppermint. I think Peppermint had Jennifer Garner, who I love. Jennifer Garner's awesome. Taken's awesome. I haven't seen the other two, but the first Taken I thought was awesome. I know most over the years it's been spoofed and made fun of. Taken is awesome. Is it high art? No. but it's I love it. I love it. So anyway, jump in the comment section and let me know what you guys think about Josh Duhamel and Charlotte Copley joining the Good Samaritan. All right, so this next bit of news is interesting. So, and this involves a cast that some I'm familiar with and some I'm not. um, so there's this, and you'll have to forgive me because sometimes I feel like I'm not up on the more recent trends or more recent popular celebrities in entertainment. Um, so there's this Grammy award-winning rapper named Renee Residente Perez Yoglar, who I'm not familiar with at all. He is going to be making his feature film directorial debut. He is from Puerto Rico, and he is going to make his feature film directorial debut with a love letter. This article is on Deadline, published by Rosie Cordero. Multi-hyphenate and 34-time Grammy and Latin Grammy award-winning rapper Renee Residente Perez Yoglar has set his feature directorial debut with a love letter to his native island of Puerto Rico. The film, titled Puerto Rico, is an epic Caribbean Western and historical drama led by uh, Benito Bad Bunny Martinez Ocasio from Bullet Train and Caught Stealing in his first leading film role. That's cool. So Bad Bunny's going to be in his first starring role. The main cast also includes Viggo Mortensen, Edward Norton, Javier Bardem, um, and multi-Oscar winning director and producer Alejandro G. Inarritu is going to be an executive producer. Um, so I'm going to attempt to read this synopsis, and I say attempt because I'm going to butcher these names, I'm sure, or butcher the pronunciation of these names. As Deadline announced in 2023, when Puerto Rico was in development, Residente and Oscar-winning screenwriter Alexander Dinelaris co-wrote the screenplay, which at the time was described as a historical drama based on the life of Puerto Rican revolutionary Jose Maldonado Roman, known as Aguila Blanca, set on the island in the late 19th century. Maldonado Roman fought against colonialism by leading a gang of ex-convicts to vindicate Puerto Rico as it sought its identity as a country. Whether the film will follow the original storyline above is as yet unknown. That sounds awesome. I'm not gonna lie. That sounds fantastic. Um, you know, a movie that's a historical epic about um, about the history of Puerto Rico. That sounds fantastic. Rene Residente Perez Yoglar making his feature film directorial debut. I'm dubious about that. You know, especially since he has he's a rapper and he's never directed a feature film. And I'm always dubious about first time film directors because depending on how good or bad it is, it can make or break your career. Like you're either done in this industry or you'll rock it to success. So I am dubious about that. However, I just want to talk about this cast for a minute. Bad Bunny being the lead role. I had he was in this movie, like this article points out, called Bullet Train. Bullet Train is awesome. It's complete action movie schlock, but it's awesome. You know, and I had no idea who Bad Bunny was prior to that movie. I'm not gonna lie to you. And he was okay in that movie. I'm a little apprehensive about him in his first leading role. So there's that. Obviously, I'm a big fan of Viggo Mortensen. You know, obviously from Lord of the Rings, playing Aragorn. He was in this movie called Eastern Promises, which I believe it came out in 2007. Which was it was directed by David Cronenberg, who I love. David Cronenberg is awesome. Eastern Promises, and it's great. It's awesome. I mean, it's fantastic. Viggo Mortensen was also in this movie called Hidalgo, which is it's directed by Joe Johnston. and Viggo Mortensen stars. It's a biopic about uh, a long distance horse rider named Frank Hopkins. Um, and it's about this where he plays Frank Hopkins, and he rides his horse across this like 3,000-mile race across the Arabian desert. It's not very. I saw it in the theater. It's not very good, but he's great in it. It's one of the few missteps I think from Joe Johnston as a director, but he's very good in it. Viggo Mortensen is. Edward Norton. Um, I like Edward Norton. I think unfortunately he has a history of being difficult to deal with, and there are a lot. Of, I remember watching Birdman with Michael Keaton, and Edward Norton is in that movie, and I've heard a lot of, I prior to that movie, I remember hearing, oh, you should see Birdman because Edward Norton is just playing himself in that movie. And I watched Birdman and I was like, yeah, he's pretty much playing himself in that movie. But I like him. Edward Norton, fun fact, I mentioned the Red Dragon movie with Anthony Hopkins. Edward Norton is in that movie. But I like him as an actor. Even though he can be a little, I have heard he can be a little difficult to deal with. American History X. That movie floored me the first time I watched it. I was like, that's a fucking great movie. That's that. Oh God, that I just like. That's a movie that you need to take a minute after you watch it and just emotionally unwind. Like, whew. And obviously I love Javier Bardem. I'm a little bit jealous that he's married to Penelope Cruz, if I do say so myself. But no, I mean, but I love Javier Bardem, obviously from No Country for Old Men, and his career just took off after that. He played a great James Bond villain in the movie Skyfall. This sounds great to me now, and the cast is great. Now, I will say, so while I am dubious about Rene Residente Perez Yoglar in his feature film debut, the fact that this cast is so good, like a lot of times when you have a first-time film director, depending on who's involved creatively in the movie, can say a lot about their first feature film. I will say that because of how good this cast is, that instills faith in me as a fan that, okay, this cast sees something in this guy as a film director. Like he's got a clear vision, he's organized, he knows what he's going to do. Because everybody involved in this movie, Edward Norton, Viggo Mortensen, Javier Bardem, they've been doing this for a while. And they can probably smell bullshit a mile away. And that says to me that they think this guy as a director is going to do a good job. So that instills hope in me, at least. That gives me hope. But, a biographical epic about essentially the founding or vindication of Puerto Rico as a country. That sounds fantastic to me. And again, it's a movie like as someone who, this sounds like a movie like I'm gonna learn something seeing this movie, if it's good, um, and that gets me excited. That I'm looking forward to. So I just wanted to talk about so yeah. So jump in the comment section. Let me know what you guys think about this Puerto Rico, about the uh, about Puerto Rico seeking its identity as a country. It's a historical epic. What do you guys think about that? Jump in the comment section and let me know. All right, so let me see here. Um, I think. Well, there's a couple more things that I like to talk about. So, one of my favorite actresses right now is Brie Larson. Um, she's she is great in everything that she is. I mean, obviously winning the Academy Award for Room. Um, you know, um, there have and she was great in Captain Marvel. Not so much Captain Marvel 2 or the Marvels or whatever you want to call it. That movie is not very good. Um, but I've always loved her. Um, I think she's a great actress. Um, so there's this new kind of horror movie that she's going to be in. This sounds very interesting to me. This article is on Joe Blow, published by Cody Haman. Um, Now, I should point out that this article was published about a month ago. So, this article says that Brie Larson has signed on to star in a creature feature called Skeletons, which J.T. Moeller, um, who I believe directed Strange Darling, would be directing from a screenplay by Brian Duffield, who wrote Spontaneous and No One Will Save You. Duffield's script is based on a short story by Philip Fracassi. Um, this article does go on to say, or J.T. Molnar, not Moeller. This article does go on to say that the story is told from the perspective of a young boy who slowly begins to discover that his beloved parents are hiding a disturbing secret about his mother's true nature. Brie Larson is playing the mother. So, Skeletons, a creature feature. Cool. I love creature features. There's the subgenre of horror. I love creature features. Uh, and Brie Larson being in a movie like this, I think is great. Um, you know, and here's the thing with a title like Skeletons, Brie Larson is playing the mother with a secret true nature. Is she going to be playing the creature? Like the human aspect of her is just a facade, and she's really this creature underneath human skin. That could be cool. That could be really cool. So, this sounds really interesting to me. I like that Brie Larson is going to be in a horror movie like this. Um, yeah. So I just wanted to talk about that for a minute. Um, so yeah. So jump in the comments section and let me know what you guys think about this. Okay, so I'm gonna get off here because I gotta go do something really quick. So, but I will be back on a little later. So, hope you guys enjoyed the show. Um, and I will be back on. I will be back on later. And as always, I will see you at the movies.